Welcome to Shop Talks. Shop Talks is a presentation of the In Kitchen. InKitchen.com is a place to get free information. We also have a YouTube channel with dozens and dozens of free information YouTube videos. I want to thank the sponsors, which is The Impression Show, In Kitchen, Los Angeles Apparel, SPSI, Stalls, Transfer Express, Lane 7, and Alpha Broder. I have here with me my buddy Stan Banks from T-Shirt Side Hustle, and we are going to talk today about what kind of things you have to think about when you are trying to go from a side hustle to a full-time gig. All right, Stan.
Oh, man, I don't know where to start. If you guys have any questions throughout, you guys can just raise your hand specifically. Try to make it as impactful as possible. Myself, I started a YouTube channel in 2017, really geared on the actual business side. And I've seen a lot of problems across people who've been just selling out of their house or hustling or doing anything of the nature when it comes to selling garments. And I guess the best place for me to start is obviously knowing your business. And what I mean by that is, keeping track of what is actually going on inside your business. Maybe 2 weeks ago now, I talked to a lady. They were afraid to actually upgrade equipment because they didn't know how much money they were actually making on a day-to-day basis. So keeping track of the jobs that you guys are doing, understanding what you charge for the job, how much the shirts cost, how much the ink or whatever decoration method it is that cost, how long it took that person, whoever was doing the work, whether it was you or not, how long it took that person to do it, so that you guys can really understand if you guys are making money or not. Like, that is the key here. This business should be overall somewhere between 30 and 60% profitable, job for job, that is, right? Overhead is a little bit different depending on how big your shop is or your space is. But as we go from working inside the house to maybe into a small storefront, we always look at what it's going to cost us in order to move into that. Oh, man, I remember looking at a building and saying, like, man, I'll never be able to pay $2,500 in rent to this building because of the amount of work that I was doing at the time, because it was like 3 buildings or whatever the case was. But looking at that building and saying I'll never be able to afford that, instead of asking myself what it would take for me to get there. Now I drive by that building and I'm like, man, I'm paying about $4,000 in rent right now. I probably could have got that when it would have been a better situation just from its sure location, right? So that's one of the things that I would really, really urge people to do, is to keep track of every single job that goes in, every blank that you purchase, the waste that you do, how much the ink cost goes into whatever is going on that you're purchasing at the time. And there's simple ways to do it that we can kind of figure out.
So do you come down on the fact of like having enough sales or having enough production equipment? Which comes first when you want to go from doing it as a side job to doing your full-time job?
I say sales, and sales is going to be the best thing for you, because as much as we can hone in on the decoration processes and go into that rabbit hole, it's only going to cost you more money. I made a video the other day, said, stop letting companies sell you things that you don't need, And the only way that you can figure out if you need something or not is by, one, outsourcing the work. I sat
What's
with
a magic term I didn't know you gave him?
Contract printing and outsourcing. So I had dinner with a guy, or rather brunch with a guy, maybe now 3 weeks ago when I was in New Jersey, and he had just bought an auto print machine, $70,000, right? But before he got to that point, in 2020, he didn't know anything about printing. 2022, he's now bought an auto because he did $70,000 in transfers. He spent $70,000 in transfers, which means, in a way, he outsourced enough that he understood that he could change his business by purchasing this piece of equipment. So by outsourcing $70,000 worth of transfers, he realized, okay, now I can bring this in. I can learn screen printing. I can get an auto. And now with this auto machine, I can do the same amount of work, and actually it'll still cost me less money, because he outsourced that work first. Which means if you guys before you get an embroidery machine that's a screen printer, find a local embroiderer, go to them, tell them you want a contract print, let them know that you screen print, you have business, you send them work. And over time, if you pay attention to what you're spending with that person, that $20,000 two head or that 60 grand for an 8-head or whatever you have to spend to buy the next piece of equipment will all make sense because you'll have the data backs it up that says, hey, over the last year, I outsourced 5,000 pieces at, $2 each. Let's just say $3 each. And that's, 15 grand or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know what numbers I just used, but don't take the numbers verbatim. But outsourcing it, understanding what it is that you're actually spending will allow you to know, like, hey, this is a valuable part of my business, and then I can invest into the equipment, the people, and the things needed to add that into my business.
We're on the other end of that. We have a lot of people contract to us. And, the right person that's honest will send us work, and they'll say, eventually I want to get my own press. I'm fine with that. Especially if they tell me and they're honest, they'll get a machine. Eventually they will not be able to do all their work at some point during the year. We'll still be friends. They'll send us work then.
Yeah, you can't, people who want to print, you can't stop them from printing. Like if they want to learn, they're going to go find me on YouTube and they're going to learn how to screen print, So, we don't ever want to, well, myself, I can't say we, but I don't want everyone to be in a situation where I'm stunning someone else's growth, which is kind of, a tough thing to say. You don't want your customers now becoming a competition. But ultimately, like even myself right now, I'm rebuilding a print shop from scratch, 300 square feet, size of a garage. And I'm starting small to show people the process and the journey. But my big jobs, I know I don't want to print more than 2 colors. And I don't want to sit on a manual press and print 300 pieces, multi 3-color, 2-color, whatever the case is, because the time just doesn't make sense for me. So I still will outsource that to the printer that I use in Philadelphia who does all of my large run work, because it's just not as profitable for me. There may be a situation which recently we could have heat pressed the job. It would have took the girl who works for me 13 hours. Instead, I outsourced the job, but it cost me $50 more. But what I did for $50 was bought back 13 hours of her time, and I'm like, well, can she make me $50 in 13 hours? And the answer is undoubtedly yes. So it makes sense for me to outsource that work, keep her free, because it's not our skill set to do very, very large volumes of work. So looking at the numbers and the data and weighing out all of your options on the table will ultimately help you make better decisions and scaling.
So actually, I just thought of this question. You run into a lot of people that, are, doing something on the side to make some extra money or make ends meet. Are there some people that should just stick with that and never take the plunge to full-time employment?
I can't say there is some people that should stick with it. I think people need to figure out what's in it for them. I don't think we should work hard to work hard. And that's something that I firmly believe in. So, if you've realized that, you want to take your side hustle further, then you definitely should, and just having the informed information that you need in order to scale is the key. But ultimately, we get to decide how far we want to take it. 3 weeks.
What kind of risk we want to take, right?
Well, yeah, risk too. But I think this business is so good that, it's not really a lot of risk unless you just jump in, hit feet first, and go get a $70,000 auto with no business. You're able to take the profits and invest it back in. Eventually, you'll be able to be in a situation where you're ahead of the game. And that's one of the things that I look at. If you have the business like you talked about earlier, if you have the sales, and you figure a lease payment on a machine is $700 or whatever you're getting, right? $700 a month. If you've already been doing the business and the data says that you're already doing, $1,000 a month, I'm just picking low numbers that make it make sense. But if you're $1,000 in profit, that you can take on with the current workload that $700 payment. But now, what I'm asking you to do now is to change your thinking and your mindset and to think of what is it costing me not to have this equipment, right? The problem with ordering $70,000 in transfers is you are reliant on shipping that transfer from there to your house. How many deadlines will you miss? So now by bringing that machine in the house, by taking that $70,000 and buying the equipment, you take back some form of control of the business, if that makes sense. So what does it cost me not to? Well, last year I missed the deadline on 18 jobs because UPS lost or FedEx lost the package. We all been there, right? It's gotten worse. I don't even know if it's gotten any better since, technically, as the pandemic has subsided. But making informed decisions will always make the business move in a better direction.
So if you're going to take the step and say you've just been subbing everything out and you want to get a nice new hand press, let's just say that. I know I run into people that don't really realize all the costs that it's going to be to set up shop. What are some of the things you got to think of besides just that major piece of equipment? What else? So I know you're setting up a shop, so you're thinking about that.
So the consumables, and you got to keep track of you got to figure out how you want to keep track of this stuff, right? Because we got job for job expenses, which is like your shirt blanks and, if you bought transfers and the labor and all of that goes into the job. But then you got your overhead, which is your rent, your electric. That kind of is what you can consider to be stagnant for the most part. Your electric and stuff goes up slightly. But the most important thing is the consumables. And how you purchase and keep track of the consumables is going to be more important than anything. Me personally, I just go for the gusto in the beginning. I'm buying all of my ink. If it's 12 or 18 colors, I think you should have at least 18 colors in your book, right? I'm just going to go buy a gallon of all 18 colors and never have to worry about it again. But that's going to take a hit on this month's purchases versus down the line, if you think about amortization over the months, I won't have to go and make those purchases again, which would allow me to not have to track that long term. But as the business starts to cycle and you've been doing it for some time, every month you're going to have to be buying screens. Every month you're going to have to replace a few different colors of ink. So keeping track of that stuff on a monthly basis and putting it into your bottom line is going to make a difference when you look at your numbers in order to figure out how you can scale.
How about when you're making the jump? Like, I think a lot of people don't think about how many screens they are going to need. They don't just need 4 for that first job. And then, like you said, maybe you need 18 colors of ink. You don't just need the ink for that job. How about the electrician that has to hook the dryer up? How about the gas that has to be run from, the basement up to the dryer, or from the house to the garage, or in that building that you rented, but the gas isn't there? Like, what kind of things they got to think about that that startup that might be more than just a basic machine?
Yeah, I think about the dryer that I had, and I pretty much had to have an electrician on call, and he had to come maybe 2 to 3 times a month to get my dryer back up and running. I'm not going to say which company it was from, but that dryer did me wrong very, very often because it always cut out on a deadline. Like, things are coming off the edge. But there's a lot of things that, especially if you're not mechanical yourself, that you're going to need to pull people in for. Running a dedicated line for a dryer, and keeping that up and running. So there's a lot of miscellaneous things that you're going to want to have some cash on the side for. Again, I still think that all in all, just thinking about my journey of a owner operator of a business, the money is there if you're pricing your garments right. You should be at least doubling your money across the board when you're pricing your jobs right when it comes to buying garments and selling them wholesale. My thought process is I want to try to make at least $5 per garment. So that's marking up the shirt and adding the print costs. I don't ever want to be below $5 a garment. Why? Just because I used to count by 5s as I poured the squeegee back in the day, just to keep track of the profit that was going on. But those little things are nuances to the business that you have to figure out. Now, when you get to scale and you get to sit down with some of the experts, there's things that are so complicated figuring out what your true costs are that I couldn't even begin to tell you. But I tried to simplify the things that make sense to me, and that's job by job. What's the profitability on the job, and that's keeping track of monthly expenses. And also, more important than anything else, make sure you're paying yourself. If you don't want to work inside your business forever, you have to pay yourself a respectable wage so that you can see that the business can sustain that by bringing somebody else in and paying them that. Whether that's 15 hours an hour, shouldn't be below 15 hours an hour today. But 15 hours an hour, and you keeping track of what's going on in the business, this job took 2 hours, this job took 4 hours, now that gets added back into what your profit is, or not added back in, but it gets taken away so you can see your true profit. So now it's like, well, I'm here. Can I go out and find jobs? This is going to take me 3 hours. This job's going to take me 2 hours. That's a day's worth of work for one person if they're slow, right? 5 hours of work, maybe it takes them 8 because they're slow. But I just pretty much bought back time that I can go out and sell, or I can do the things that I'm good at.
It's funny, I'm sitting here thinking of all the things you need if you're going to start a shop. It's a lot. Like, how are you going to make films?
Yeah, exposures.
How you gonna expose them? How you gonna reclaim your screens? All that stuff. It's a lot of stuff. And I think you touched on it just briefly. You're like, there's a lot of people here that want to sell you something and don't really tell you everything that's involved, right?
Yeah. So, think about starting a screen print shop. We only think about the equipment, which is true. Equipment, ink, maybe a squeegee and a dryer unit, right? But burning screen is a process. Screens today are about $30. They've gone up $35 for an aluminum screen. So those things are going up. How many do you want in your business? Probably somewhere of a small business around 20, just to be like very, very modest, depending on what you're doing. But if you're going to specialize in 4-color prints and fronts and backs, you're going to need a lot more screens in your shop to do. Now, if you have a system where I've seen a shop run off like literally 6 screens, but they're reclaiming a job every day, they're reclaiming whatever they did that day, that's a commitment to a process that you're going to have to commit to. But also, if one thing holds you up, you're stuck. One shirt, you're a shirt short because of the shipment. Now your screens for that 4-color job or maybe 3-color job, they're tied up into that job. So these are all things that we're going to have to consider. The consumables are going to go on and on and on. That's what's going to actually eat at you, and you're not going to pay attention to at the end of the day when it comes to figuring out how much money you're really making.
I think if you're here at a trade show, if you run into anybody that's not in your area that doesn't mind, they're not competition, I would ask them, all right, you got a small shop, how many screens do you need? What did you not think of when you started?
Yeah, the connection of you guys being in a room here, there's a person, like I said in the last speech, is a person to the left and the right of you that's going to bring you more value than probably what I'm doing on stage. I've been a part of the screen print community for a while now. And I've just learned about, the conferences and things that you can go to that are coming up that, it's more about the connections. I see printers flying across the country to go to visit somebody else's shop to figure out what they could do better or how they can help another shop. So, building the community and being a part of the community and participating can go a really, really long way into like the growth of your business and getting your questions answered.
Yeah, I think you also want to look for ask around who's a trusted vendor. You want people, there are good people, some of the ones in this room that will not sell you something that you don't need. That's a short-term solution. If they sell you something and you didn't really need it, you're never going to buy from them again. Look at the people that have been around for a while, and they're not going to sell you something you don't need.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the talks that I have often is investing back into your business, that's investing into your vendors and figuring out, through outsourcing. Yeah, so figuring out truly by looking at the money that you're making, the revenue streams, having it line by line. Hey, this is how much we made on embroidery. This is how much we made on screen printing. A lot of us if we're looking at the numbers, only look at the totals, but break it down, outsource the work first. Figure out if you have the customer base to support the equipment that you're going to run so that equipment can run. The problem is that when people buy equipment without customers, they're speculating like, oh man, I can sell this shirt for $25 each because I got a DTG machine. Oh, I only need to make 50 sales to make the payment, but you haven't made those 50 sales yet. You want to make sure that you're doing that business ahead of time before you walk into a payment and you're trying to figure out how to run a machine. But also, on top of trying to figure out how to run a machine, you never have the time to go out and sell the products that you need to sell in order to make those payments.
All right, I'm going to run a bunch of scenarios here together and see if you agree.
All right.
So, if you are a screen printer, I think that it's not that hard to add embroidery.
I would disagree.
Oh, all right.
I definitely would disagree. The embroidery process it's a completely different art process, first and foremost. Digitizing is not the same as just getting a vector file, which we all have problems getting in the first place. You can outsource it, so that's a good thing. Today, there's companies here, I'm pretty sure there's some that can digitize your work for you at a fair price. The process of learning the stitches and all of that kind of stuff, I think, is more complex than it is to learn screen printing, of like just truly understanding the embroidery process of just, yeah.
Might be us. We did it okay. The other way around, I know everyone would agree. If you're an embroiderer and you want to get into screen printing, that is a tough
Way
one.
easier.
That's a tough one.
I think it's way easier. I'm the exact opposite. I think it's easier to screen print and embroider, right? Only because when you think about the artwork in the process of what's going on, like the direction of stitches, if you have a good digitizer, then all it is hooping and then fixing thread breaks, right? So if you truly talk about learning the process from start to finish, I think it's a lot different today. But in general, making a screen is probably the hardest part of screen printing. Getting that process down, I think anybody can pull a squeegee.
Interesting. Okay. I think a lot of embroiderers don't realize how long of a process it is, and that you have to add a screen room and all kinds of stuff, ink mixing.
Definitely.
You can't just buy the ink like you buy your thread.
I think we're about to start a fight right here on stage right now.
If you're doing transfers, I think doing either embroidery or screen printing could be very difficult.
Yeah, transfers is probably one of my favorite processes just because it's very, very easy to start. I think anybody can learn. I can leave anybody at a heat press in 30 minutes and be confident that they're going to be able to put out work that is ready to be delivered to a customer. Screen print is a trade. Embroidery is maybe half a trade, right? But the process of like using transfers, because the screen print is done for you, is very, very simple and easy to get started.
I think buying transfers, it's a kind of a hard transition to make them, yes? If
Yes.
you buy a DTF machine or something.
Yeah, maintenance. Maintenance and being a technically savvy person is going to make the difference in if you're able to make transfers. Investing into the right equipment is very, very early on, so you're going to be dealing with some troubleshooting and different things like that can consume your time. I think, some of the big transfer manufacturers, they may have 30 machines, and they're like, man, 12 of them are down at any given moment. Which day is it today? Which machine is down? But, being technically savvy, transfer printing is not for everybody, but printing transfers is.
I think that getting into DTG from anything is not too hard.
I agree. I mean, it's pretty much today's technology has gotten rid of a lot of the downside to DTG. So, it's pretty much running a home printer. Obviously a RIP software is a little bit different than press and print Microsoft Word. However, it's pretty much ran on autopilot for you to upload your artwork, run the RIP program, and go ahead and press print.
All right, how about some questions? Any questions? People that are about to make the transition to a side hustle to a business, it's full-time, etc.
Hello, how you doing today? I have a question, like for niches or competitive advantage. I've been going to anime and comic book shows for a while, selling my artwork, and I'm getting a friend into t-shirt business. Would you say the market is saturated with grown-up shirts and not enough kid shirts? And so what I wanted to do was get him in doing kid shirts at the shows, and I think that would be a pretty good niche. What do you think?
So niches bring riches. First and foremost, being in a comic book niche is something that you can kind of set yourself apart in. Now, if you're going to shows, are there a lot of kids at the shows? Yeah, so if it's a lot of kids, then that would make sense. That would be something that would set you apart. I'm more likely to buy something because my daughter likes it than whether I like it or not, right? So it makes a lot more sense. The kids pulling a heartstring. When I was doing photography, it was pretty much weddings,
I thought they
babies.
pulled on the wallet string.
Yeah. Sorry, I would say wallets now. Weddings, babies, and pets, right? So if the kid runs over to your booth because you have dope artwork and you have it in their size, who's likely? The parents are probably more likely to buy because they want it. So I think it's definitely a good idea, especially when you think about adult shirts being oversaturated. You already figured out what the white space is. So the white space is, if the adult market is oversaturated, selling you shirts, it's not saturated for you, so you already found a differentiating factor for you. Now it's just about executing on that idea.
Other questions?
Nope. Good. Let's wrap it up. Got one here.
What's the best way to find your own niche?
What is the best way to find your own niche?
Well, Actually, if you're around tomorrow, there's this guy, Johnny Baum, that is going to talk at 1 o'clock. It was added to the schedule. He is all about that. So when I was talking to him, it's what you like. If you like something, like if you like golf or you like barbecue and your heart's in it, that's a good method. It's not always a good method, but it's a good start. You're going to be happier going to work, you're going to do a better job, and you're going to relate to your customers better. So that's what he would say anyway. And for me, I was interested more in artwork, so we got way into simulated process so we could reproduce it. If I was into money, maybe I wouldn't have done that, but I did make money doing it. So if you really care about it, that's one way to find your niche.
So I'm gonna go from the screen print side, and I'm gonna go from more like the brand side. So on like the professional decorator side, by figuring out what a specialty is that you can offer, right? Like becoming very, very detailed in the level of work that you're able to produce, whether that's high density printing, whether that's puff printing, whether that's oversized printing. That'll set you apart from most of the market who are living in that 12 by 12 box, right? You can also look at different finishings, whether you relabel, whether you add labels on the hem, different things like that. As a printer and as a print shop can set your shop apart from other printers in the area. You can carve out a niche that way. So I wrote a book called Niches Bring Riches, and it's pretty much what he talked about is figuring out what it is that you like. Like write down a list. In the book I wrote down 10 things. I went to a historically black college, so I can design things specific for them. Whatever else, I'm from the state of Delaware. I can create a niche for that, right? I created
for all 10 people that live there?
Yeah, right. But we're the first state, so without us, you don't exist. So, and that was one of the things. So I made a simple design that said first across the chest, and the eye was the shape of the state. People loved it. If you're from Delaware, you know the shape, you know what it means because we are the first state, and I called it First State of Mind. And being able to carve out that niche simply based on my my location. I'm not even going to try to say the word. Based on my location, everybody who was from Delaware, I felt like I could go to any event happening in the state and I could go vend because the whole world or the whole state was my playground when it came to that idea. For the Black College brand, I just went to colleges that fit what I was doing. So figuring out what it is that you like, what you do every day, what you enjoy doing, bringing on T-shirts, mixing trends with like the true history. So I got a new line for Delaware that's called State Facts. So I went and I took the State Fox and I made a streetwear design with it. I oversized print and it said Gray Fox and kind of like a big design. So I took some of the old history and made it modern. So these are things that you can do inside of your niches that will allow you to kind of carve out a space. But ultimately, you got to decide what you like and what you truly have fun doing. Make it for you. I got stuff that I've made that people ask me for every time I wear it, but I don't have a way for them to get it. Although it's a good design, I'm just too busy at the current moment to actually print it. But it tells me every time that, like, man, I'm making something really good because people are asking me about it all the time.
I think it's never been easier to do research, see what people are doing, around the country or around the world, and maybe something that you see isn't being done in your area. That's a way to find a niche. I think also I had a guy that was a customer, and he would go to like Chamber of Commerce and Rotary meetings and look for the people not being served. So it's obvious to serve breweries, for example, but everybody's trying to do that. So he goes, I go for the flying under the radar. Like he just really wanted to make money. So the insurance companies and the banks, he served them. That's what he did. And they're not the obvious ones that, I'm going to just go print for an insurance company, but maybe they do a lot of promotional shirts. I know we print a bunch for somebody, so I know they do.
That's very interesting that you brought up breweries. So one of the things that I'm doing to kind of carve out a niche for myself is to attack the breweries in my area. Only because as I open up this print shop that I'm relaunching right now in the process of doing, is that there's no live printing in my area. So I know that if I take a one station Ford color press to an event at a brewery and I set up and I print a design for that brewery, I can create a buzz around me, whether I get the brewery business, although I believe I will just from the conversation, but people seeing what it is that I'm capable of doing in that room who goes to breweries? Corporate companies go happy hours or different things like that. So the next connection may come off of that. So I'm using that idea as a way to carve out a lane for my business, not necessarily a brand, but a way to carve out a lane for my business to try to use that to set me apart in a market that may be oversaturated or crowded too. So looking for little things that you can do to set yourself apart would be a huge asset.
If you also seek out things that people are they love or get addicted to, so alcohol's never gonna be bad, sex, pets, golf, like people are so into these, hunting, fishing, people are so into those things. It's unlimited those are the unlimited niches, if you will, where people can't get enough of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Other questions?
Where do we see the DTF industry, direct-to-film industry going?
We have a talk at 4 o'clock today about that.
Well, I will
How's that?
give you I'm not on that talk, so I'll give you my view.
Oh, no, no, you are.
I am?
I'm sticking you on it because 3 people are in Florida. They're not coming.
Ooh, man, so I'll be back. But I'll give you a preview. In general, DTF, it's still early in the process, but it's had a way better leg in than what DTG had before. So building off of that technology has spread the process up. It's going to get better and better. I'm still waiting for a big company to get behind it to really provide us something. They're pretty much all running through Epson printheads. So if Epson went ahead and did something specifically for this, now how that conflicts with their DTG process is, one of those things. But eventually, when a big company gets behind it, outside of like using DTG on DTF machines, doing DTF on DTG machines, I think we'll have something that'll be truly sustainable in a sense. But, we have a lot of companies who have manufactured inks and different things to run through this process, but it's gonna naturally keep eating away a lot more because a lot of bigger print shops believe in the technology as well. It gives you a lot more flexibility than you're used to. It handles DTG, not being able to do polyester well. So it's addressing some of the problems that we have, which makes it ultimately one of the very, very, good things about the technology.
I think that there's no doubt that the diversity of garments in terms of how they're made, what they're made of, is just going to keep expanding. And DTF at the moment is the best answer for decorating the widest range of fabrics and constructions. So you're not going to go wrong. But we're a screen printer with all kinds of presses, and we use DTF a lot. It's an answer to a lot of problems.
I think most shops is more so of like, do we make it ourselves or do we outsource it? That's more like the question that people have. And I think it's still today, unless you're doing a ton of business in it, I think it's still an outsourced thing at the current moment for most shops. And then the ones that I talked to who have bought it, and it was like, man, we were spending so much money on transfers that we had to just try to bring it in because, it's really attractive when you hear about like 50 cents to print this and 75 cents to print that, but the headache of going into this, the servicing of the machine is what's missing. The labor intensive, the ink that's running through when you're not using the machine and cycling and waste. So those are things that we don't consider in that process. But, I still think it's the time to buy overall unless you're doing a lot of business in it.
If you're buying the transfers, you made money. You know what the garment costs. You know what the transfer costs. You're not going to ruin that many. And if you charge enough to make money on it, it's very cut and dried. Whereas if you have the machine, it starts getting really damn complicated fast. Other questions? All right, we're around if you want to ask us privately questions if you're shy. Anyway, I want to thank Alpha Broder, Los Angeles Apparel Impressions, and check out inkitchen.com. Thanks for coming.